Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to a live edition of Fantasy Warfare Tournament. My name is Sean, coming to you from London, Ontario, Canada. This is going to be our follow-up to last week's edition, which was the greatest heel turns. This one is the greatest face turns. Whether you're joining us tonight live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, feel free to join us. Put your comments in. Have your vote. Maybe we vote the same as you did. We'll definitely put up your comments during the show. But before we can get into the show, we're going to bring in our panel for tonight, starting right here in London, Ontario, with CWN's own Chris Maloney. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. You know what? You guys gave me that option. I could go live or go pre-record. It's like, hell no, we're going live. So that was my call right there. The guys questioned me. It's like, hey, do you want to do it tonight? You want to do it tomorrow? I was like, no, we're gonna go live tomorrow. So
yeah, well, normally we do record on a Tuesday to go on delay, obviously on Wednesdays. But I drove our other panelists home to Niagara Falls after he visited London for Thanksgiving, and that is Jonesy. How are you, Jonesy?
I am great. I am just a pitcher today.
Yeah, it looks like a view from Oaks Garden in Niagara Falls, looking towards the American Falls, potentially. If not, that's outside of the Victoria Queen Victoria Cafe. Second one is right. Okay, so guys, how are you tonight? Chris, Jonesy?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I don't know why my phone's being a douche, but that's okay. It's an old phone.
Well, yeah, hopefully soon you'll have a brand new computer, but you have your notes, and we're going to show our traditional video to let people know what we are looking at this week. And as per usual, just like the last week's with the heel turns, and also our month-long of the music, we cannot put this up here without risking a knock for copyright. So you can look in the description and you'll see a playlist on YouTube where all these history sort of markers are there, and you can watch what we look back on to refresh our memories. So I'll show that, and then Jonesy, you can break down the bracket. So as you saw, that was our list for tonight. Chris Jones, would you like to run down our brackets?
I sure would love to. Of course, this will not be as effective because you can't see me, so any hand gestures are going to go to waste. But here it comes. We got CM Punk's Pipe Bomb, which is Hello Colt Cabana, versus Thumbs Down to Orton, which we were at. Maloney, were you there as well?
No, I end up watching on TV. So, but my heart was there.
Wow, we're gonna have to talk about like why you weren't there, because you'd miss, especially when it was a Raw, and I think it was the first live Raw that they did there. So, anyways, we got Xena on a team player versus Batista leads Evolution. And we've got Savage Savage and Liz reunite, which is at WrestleMania 7. That one's just fantastic. And that one's against Virgil is a Man. And he is a man. We got Austin Won't Give Up versus Boss Man Can't Be Bought.
Apparently we have those reversed.
Oh.
But it's all good.
Okay. We got I'm working on paper today, so I don't know how that happened, but hey, Heenan slaps Andre, and that's against Brian Leaves the Wyatts. We've got Hogan at WrestleMania 18, which we were at again. I'm not sure. Were you there, Maloney?
Sorry,
Maloney,
were you
in Toronto there for WrestleMania 18?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I had
Okay,
4 seats,
good,
so I had to stand in the aisle most of the night, though.
All right. And that was going up against Jericho Makes the List. And rounding all this off, we've got Luger's Patriotic Slam versus Undertaker Saves Liz. And the last one is Jake Takes a Guitar Shot. And that's up against, the Mega Powers. So good luck, Jake. So there you go.
Well,
that's
somehow Savage ended up in this twice.
Well, Hogan's kind of in here a couple of times in a way, isn't he?
Yeah, but last week it was more people turning on Hogan. This time Hogan's only, I think, in there. Well, he is part of the Mega Powers thing, but that was a Savage face turn. So, guys, anything you see being a difficult vote in the first round?
First match right away for me.
Okay. Jonesy?
For me, actually, the Austin Boss Man one is because I just liked how they did the Boss Man one. It's fairly well done. They do a lot of thinking on all of these. And where is my OneNote? I kind of realized halfway through this. Anyways, I'll find it. What this all breaks down to. Every single one of these breaks down to the same thing. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so we start off with round 1, match 1, and that is CM Punk's pipe bomb taking on Randy Orton, thumbs up, thumbs down. And I typed that up quickly so we have the proper things. But anyways, we start off with CM Punk's pipe bomb. At that time, CM Punk was still a heel. He was feuding with John Cena over the world title. The night that happened was on a Monday Night Raw, and Cena was in a tables match with R-Truth, who was doing a heel thing, not doing the slapstick 42-time 24/7 365 7-Eleven champion that they're doing with him right now. But CM Punk got involved with all that, and the fans still were against John Cena at the time. So basically anybody who was against Cena was also basically cheered. But after he cost Cena the match, he ended up taking the microphone and going up to the top of the ramp. And he just let loose with everything that he was on his mind, breaking the fourth wall, waving the Colt Cabana, calling Triple H a doofus, just insulting the whole McMahon family. Was about to do a story about Vince and when they started cutting him off. And it was just a moment where a lot of the fourth wall, as I said, was taken down, and fans got behind that. And after that, he was totally a babyface. People were knowing that his contract was expiring. He was supposed to go against Cena in a ladder match at Money in the Bank. And that basically turned him face, even though he was going against John Cena at that Money in the Bank event. As we know, he ended up winning the title, blowing a kiss to Vince McMahon and taking off with the title, put it in his fridge. There was a picture of that on Twitter. I wish they had kept it out longer instead of revealing a week later that he'd actually re-signed. But they could have had a little bit more fun with that whole thing. But that's the ultimate point where CM Punk turned face. He'd done the Straight Edge Society shtick at that beforehand, And ever since then, people still chant CM Punk when they're in arenas. He's taking on Randy Orton, and the face turn that happened right here in London at Raw, Live Raw, the JLC at the time, now Budweiser Gardens. It was the night after SummerSlam 2004. He just beat Chris Benoit, yes, I'm saying that name, for the World Heavyweight title, the Big Gold. He earned a shot at Benoit for the title at SummerSlam and ended up picking up the title, becoming the youngest world champion at the time. He was a member of Evolution, and that consisted of Batista, Triple H, and Ric Flair. Of course, him winning the title from Benoit really infuriated Triple H because he expected Orton just to soften up Benoit and get him in position for Triple H to take the title. And so that next night on Raw here in London, they celebrated the fact that Randy was the champion. Randy even did a rematch with Benoit to close out the night, and he ended up retaining the title. The Evolution's in there celebrating. Batista picks him up on his shoulders, and they're celebrating away. And then all of a sudden, the face of Triple H goes stone cold straight, and he's been doing the whole thumbs up, and then went. And that's when the electric chair happened with Batista dumping Orton, and they beat the hell out of him. The next week on Raw, they issued an ultimatum for Randy to hand over the title. Randy took off the belt, was about to hand over the title, and instead spit in Triple H's face, hit Triple H with the belt in the face, and then ran through the crowd, and that solidified his face turn. So when I'm looking at both these, where things went, the moments, that was a shocking moment here to see live, but the reveal of the fourth wall, this is a tough one, as you just said at the beginning of the show, Chris Maloney. I love the shock value, and I know I was... I'm going to go with hometown and go with Orton getting it, even though I am a huge mark for CM Punk and have a couple of his shirts and thought that was an awesome fourth reveal. But I don't know if it's going to survive. Chris Maloney, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. Jones is a tiebreaker because I went with CM Punk. So okay. It was interesting because of the fact is I was on the fence between the two. But then when I thought about legitimacy, and the fact is, without that happening in London, Ontario, there would be no bias. It would be hands down Punk. So the fact is, the Randy Orton turn, I remember watching Monday Night Raw on TV. I wasn't there. Not exactly sure why. I don't remember, but I wasn't there, but I was watching it on TV. And just the Triple H thing with the thumbs down. Yes, it was iconic. Yes, it was epic. But there is a bias because it was here at Budweiser Gardens, John Labatt Center back in the day here in London, Ontario. But when you talk about what was more of a shocking moment, it was CM Punk on that mic, sitting cross-legged, John Cena buckled over, with his back against the turnbuckles, listening to Punk do what he did. And the way they ended that segment with Punk going like this to the microphone and be like, and getting cut off, so to speak. But the pipe bomb heard around the world that the internet blew up on. Yeah, I got to go CM Punk. So 1-1. So Jones, is up to you.
I'm good with that. Like I said, I love Punk, but so Jonesy.
Well, Orton, he's had some moments at the JLC. He had that one before he even was really known. They had him at the. I'm not sure what event it was for, but he was there shortly into his wrestling career doing a signing when there was a ticket sale going on for the first event there, maybe. I don't know what it was. I remember being there and remember seeing him there. And I think something else happened to him but at the JLC. I know Mr. Ass had a few things happen to him at the JLC. He hurt himself bad the one time, and I forget what the other thing was. But anyways, here's the thing. It depends on how you look at it. The Orton one, it's good how it kind of broke down, but in the same, my problem with that one is why didn't Triple H not interfere in the match near the end? Why did they do it that way? Because why would Triple H wait for him to beat Benoit again? He beat him the night before, so he knows he can take him. So why wouldn't he guarantee that he loses the belt back to Benoit? So to me, it's like he should at least tried to enter the match, and then it would be a question of, oh, did he mean to interfere and help Benoit, or did he do this? And then they could have done that other in the end. It just, that's one part I've seen in the puzzle that it's kind of silly that they didn't do. The CM Punk's pipe bomb, the problem with that one is, what did it lead to? A couple, 2 or 3 years of greatness, and after that he took his ball and went home. So really it was wasted. Like he hasn't. So that's where you would be in the middle, but I'm looking at not so much what it did for their career, what the moment was at the time. The Orton one was shocking, but the CM Punk one was different. It was, he didn't lay a hand on his opponent, and he sat down and talked. That was his face hold. Like, so for me, CM Punk earns it by a mile.
Very good. Yeah, like I said, I'm good either way. How it ended up rolling out.
No, you're not. You're upset.
I'm not upset at all by that. I threw Orton a bone, even though I'm not actually a huge Orton fan to begin with. But that takes us to match number 2. John Cena, not being the member of Brock Lesnar's team for Survivor Series, taking on Batista, another thumbs up, thumbs down moment. Chris Maloney, what do you got?
Okay, so I was confused with the whole John Cena thing, because if you type John Cena face turn, there is so much online. Biggest thing that comes up is Nexus, obviously. But you're talking the 2003 turn, right?
Yeah, that's the only thing that came up when I was looking for different face turns, and that's what stuck out was because he was a heel up until that moment.
All right, so guys, if you got to go back in the books there, so 17 years ago, type into YouTube John Cena face turn 2003. There's a lasting image online of John Cena face down, chair in the ring, 4 guys celebrating. Those 4 guys are Nathan Jones, The Big Show, Matt Morgan, and Brock Lesnar. So John Cena basically, said F you to those guys. Not wanting to be part of that team anymore, and they basically got the hugest beatdown in the world. I think it was on SmackDown from the looks of it there. The thing is about that, it does not stand out at all to me. Obviously, Cena with the gimmick that he had against Kurt Angle, into coming of his own, into the rapper gimmick, so forth and so on, to him winning that very first United States Championship from the Big Show at WrestleMania 20. The fact is, everything had to lead up to something. But how did John Cena become a face? To me, I had to go and Google this. I had to go on YouTube. So it doesn't stand out to me as anything substantial. In saying that, not to say it wasn't anything big, because the fact is John Cena has never been a heel since. So obviously 17 years later, it's still, memorable, so to speak, to John Cena fans, not necessarily wrestling fans, but to John Cena fans. The other, however, is Batista. And Batista was such a huge part of Evolution. And when you think about Batista, you think about the fact that he was, what was his gimmick name when he was with Devon?
Deacon Batista.
Yeah. So, and he was,
change box.
Yeah. And down in OVW, he was Leviathan, you know what I mean? So bald headed Batista down in OVW named Leviathan. He comes up as Deacon Batista as far as the Dudley Boys splitting up. And basically being a side character, basically a guy in a tuxedo with his arms ripped off, you know what I mean? Carrying a briefcase and chains, if my memory serves me correctly. Evolution happens, and Batista needs a breakout. And to my knowledge, it was Batista. Was it WrestleMania 21? Was it? Was it that far ago? Yeah, WrestleMania 21. He wins the Royal Rumble. People, Triple H is champ, and people are like, oh, okay, he's never going to face Triple H. And then next thing you know, he basically, looks at Triple H, and I think if I remember correctly, and this is serving memory, power bombs him through a table, signs the contract, and then the match is on, I think, WrestleMania 21, if I remember correctly. Regardless of the fact, Batista, and I think it was a whole big thumbs down moment again, going against the guy who made him a superstar. How do you go against that? So you got John Cena, who had to Google to remember what the heck happened. I don't even think I even saw it originally. Versus Batista, which I remember like it stood out like yesterday. So I got to go Batista hands down. And the fact is the match at WrestleMania was absolutely amazing between the two of those guys. And the fact is it launched Batista's career as a superstar. But that, Batista winning that Rumble and then challenging Triple H, hands down.
Jonesy.
Well, this one's an easy one. The Xena one I really liked because it was short. There wasn't much studying to do on that one. The Batista one is the better one. And Flair's eyes just make it all worth watching. So I go with Batista on that one.
Yeah, as I said, when Chris Maloney was talking about the John Cena turn, watching it was on SmackDown, and they were looking for a fifth member to join Brock Lesnar's team for Survivor Series. And they were inviting him to be a part of it, but he didn't want to be the fifth guy. And fans were already cheering for him at that point. Soon they would change that, obviously. But they were chanting for him, and they were saying, oh, you need to earn your spot to get titles and whatever. But then, yeah,
kind of spot?
He said he didn't want to be number 5. That's when A-Train came and destroyed him. And all of a sudden, he ends up on Team Angle at that Survivor Series. So not very huge for
a
memorable turn. What's that, Jonesy?
A stain spot? What kind of spot was that you were referring to?
A liver spot. You never know. Not just any spot. Not even with the 4 Horsemen. But then, we were talking about what happened with Batista's turn. Batista also heard Triple H and Ric Flair leading up to that contract signing conspiring against him when they didn't know about it. And he had the option of going to SmackDown to challenge JBL for the belt at WrestleMania or Triple H. And both general managers were there. He's looking at the contracts, and they were doing go for the SmackDown one because he dropped the Raw one. And that's when he did the thumbs down and picked up the other one and signed it after destroying Triple H. So it was calling back to what happened with Orton and another person leaving Evolution. And we saw what happened afterwards. So it's definitely a clean sweep on that. So 3-0 there, which takes us to our next one. Jonesy, you get Steve Austin Won't Give Up taking on the Boss Man. Can't be bought.
I'm just gonna flip my book. There we go. So
your bracket's off, eh?
Yeah, I don't know why, but we're going to go with it.
So we're going Austin Bossman next.
Austin Bossman.
Yeah, next. I know. I'm on paper. I just had to flip my book, man. Okay, but that's okay.
It's not really going to affect the outcome. It's still in the same bracket.
But it changes everything now. I would have looked at things differently. I would have been in a different frame of mind. Anyways, Austin up. So this Brett turned into a whiner. That's what happened here. Austin was turning into a fan favorite, was becoming a whiner. He was getting on the microphone and bitching about what was going on and all that. So WrestleMania 13 comes. And the match went into the crowd. It did finally get to the ring, I believe, or I got my notes mixed up. Anyways, Ken Shamrock was the ref. Brett and Austin's I can't read my writing now. Oh well. Anyways, that's what it was. So he gets him in a sharpshooter, and Austin just doesn't quit. And at least at that time in the wrestling era, you never seen that, especially a guy bleeding and then passing out. So it was done really well, and it was a way for Brett to win the match, but for Austin to not lose, if anything, gain his dignity and respect from the crowd, because this guy just won't give up, especially against Brett, who is a wrestling machine, but he's a bit of a dork. So um, so Austin's leg, Shamrock stops Brett. Yep, Shamrock stops Brett, and Austin stuns a ref. That's the only part I didn't like about it. I didn't like the fact that they had another ref come in and he goes and stuns them. We know you haven't changed. I think that's why they did that, to go, well, he's still going to be I think he should have stunned Shamrock, personally. If you're going to do it to a ref, they should have done it to Shamrock. Then hell, on the next night they could have had Shamrock versus him or something. So for me, that was a minus in that whole thing. And that was going up against Boss Man, who can't be bought. It's good. I like how it plays out. It seems a little dry at times, and I think that's because they go from the ring, what happened there with the bag had Damien and the $1 million belt in. It was Jake going against DiBiase. Slickster was on the outside. Bossman attacks Jake and takes the bag to the Brother Love show. So Bossman is still bad, but unbeknownst to him, DiBiase claims he bought the services of the Bossman. Everything was going great until DiBiase's ego got him, and the Bossman, he didn't know he was bought, so he got all pissed off and uncuffs Jake. He goes and tells DiBiase off. He goes and unlocks Jake, and the whole thing is like, he still remained his character. He didn't, turn into a goody two shoes, and that's with a lot of these. It's almost like they could have been good or bad, and they decided to go with the good route as far as what kind of wrestlers they were going to fight. Nowadays, I think a Bossman character would be great because he can be on either side. I mean, so that I did like how all that worked out, especially when he gave him the key. And Jake was kind of like, oh shit, what the hell? Though you think maybe Jake would have gave him a DDT or something, but hey, that one I haven't decided which one, because they're both pretty good. But if any sticks out, it's probably the Austin one. But I just like what it did for the Bossman. It really pushed his career, and I think he needed that moment. I'm not sure if Austin needed to bleed out and all that to become popular, but I'm going to go with Austin because he lived longer. And I know that's horrible, but that I have to come up with something. No, the last one's probably a little better, but I really do like the Bossman one. I remember when it happened, watching it on Saturday night or morning, whenever it happened. It was great. So, but I got to give it to Austin on that one.
Yeah, it was unique, at least with the Bossman sort of concept, because it was inserting into a different story, because Jake and DiBiase were the ones feuding, and Bossman was, I think, still teaming with Akeem at the time and doing the Twin Towers thing. And then, of course, bought the services, and as Jonesy explained, they got the belt back from Jake. But I think it was the first time ever that you'd see that happen in the ring, and you rarely saw anything with Superstar versus Superstar on Superstars. It was usually Superstar against a jobber that happened. But in this case, it was Jake and DiBiase going at it, and then going immediately from that to the Brother Love show. And I don't recall that ever happening. It would be always its separate segment. So how the flow went that way was pretty cool. And just the fact, as you said, Jones, that he didn't really change because he was still going after criminals. But in this case, they were actually people who we thought and knew were bad guys, as opposed to him abusing his authority beforehand and going against fan favorites. But he really didn't change. And neither did Austin, because Austin just had this groundswell of support. Even before he said the infamous Austin 316 words, And the commentating helped at WrestleMania 13 to put over the change of Brett and Austin in that case. I think even in the video, you can actually see Brett blading Austin to get it done. And blading was forbidden, but once again, just like at WrestleMania 8, Bret Hart went, it was an accident. So Brett was able to do that. They told a wonderful story in that case. People are already starting to turn on Bret Hart. Austin was telling the truth about Brett. So jumping on the Austin bandwagon was easy to do. They solidified the heel turn for Brett and the face turn for Steve at that whole match. You can't go wrong with that one, because even when Steve went to try and be heel again at WrestleMania 17, it fell flat because people wouldn't accept it. It was a total departure from what he was. But the face turn was not changing Stone Cold Steve Austin at all. He was still the badass motherfucker that was doing everything, still stomping mud holes and people, drinking beer, waving middle fingers. It's just people were into that at that time. So the legacy of that whole thing, it's definitely Austin. Sweep or not?
No, hell yeah. It's got to be a sweep. It's one of those things, another one of those things. I for whatever reason, I blank out the early 90s, I think, as far as WWF goes. And then 10 years later, obviously 2003 with Cena. But regardless of the fact, you think about it this way. You think of Austin, WrestleMania 13, Chicago, Hart versus Austin, Ken Shamrock as referee. Austin, that iconic image that everybody talks about, his face, locked in the sharpshooter, just bleeding, and I think they even made a T-shirt out of it at one point. And then WrestleMania 14, what happens? He ends up beating Shawn Michaels to become WWE champion. So the difference a year makes, but without that iconic moment, we would never have seen Austin the way we did. If that was the moment to me. And a lot of people say Austin 316, but no, that was the moment to me. Fans got behind Austin, and the Austin train basically went, and there was no turning back on it. So Boss Man, Jake DiBiase, YouTube, Google, that's the only way I'm going to remember it. But Austin stands out in my memory as probably one of the top 10 WrestleMania moments ever. So yeah, clean sweep for Austin.
Yeah, and that's where, as you said, you're Googling to find these things. And I did the best I could to find them for us to compare. And they're in that playlist in the description. So definitely check it out so you can refresh your memory and see if we were right or wrong. Moving on to match number 4, we have Savage Loves Elizabeth and Virgil is a Man. So everybody knows I'm a huge mark for Savage. He's what got me into wrestling, seeing him break the neck of Steamboat. But always by his side was the lovely Elizabeth. We'll talk about something else involving Savage later on to wrap up this round. But she was always by his side until the Mega Powers exploded, which we talked about last week. And he was a heel. He ended up with Sherry by his side, but Elizabeth was always around. Even the mixed tag match that happened at WrestleMania 6 with Dusty and Sapphire against Sherry and Savage, they had to bring out Elizabeth to be in the corner opposite Randy. She'd show up periodically here and there, but everybody knew there were the attachment that was between them. And then it came to WrestleMania 7. The build-up between Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage came to a head after Savage had cost Warrior the title at Royal Rumble to drop it to Slaughter, and they decided to put their careers on the line. And only one man was going to continue, and the other man would have to go away. So all that hype, big match. Savage brings out the best in Warrior. 2 WrestleManias in a row, Warrior had a decent match. I think this match was better than the one against Hogan at Mania 6. But to start things off, before even the talent came out, Monsoon and Heenan were at ringside talking about the setup of the match while they were getting off the last match. And next thing you know, Heenan's like, whoa, what? Who's that? Is that Elizabeth? and they get the director to zoom in, and they find her in the aisle, and she's sitting there, and Heenan's just like, oh, she came here just to rub it in his face and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the match, they occasionally look back at her, and she was worried about what was going on. But as we know, Savage ended up losing his career, and Sherry snapped on him and started beating on him and kicking him. That Elizabeth had enough and ran down the aisle after hopping the guardrail, got in there, grabbed Sherry by the hair, and tossed her out of the ring. One of the first times Elizabeth ever got physical at all. Maybe one other time at SummerSlam, I think 89, where she used 88. No, 89. My apologies. 89, where she used the loaded purse to hit Sherry with. But she really didn't get too physical. And when she did, it was against Sherry. And she was trying to help Savage up, and Savage was brushing her off. Sherry's on the floor yelling at her. And Savage nearly hits Elizabeth and then realizes who he is. And next thing you know, as Elizabeth's pleading for him to just stop, he opens his arms, they hug. Fans are crying. He lifts her up on his shoulders. Heenan's just like, my God, her shoes are too tight. That's what's going on. Gorilla's saying a tender moment. They're acknowledging that they love each other. And so they celebrate their reunion. Elizabeth goes to sit on the ropes to let Savage out. Savage says, opens them up for her. She gets out. They walk out together, and then he becomes a commentator, eventually proposes. They do the wedding at SummerSlam. But that moment turned Savage. 2 years and a little bit of being a heel, that moment just snapped after having a great match with Warrior. But everybody saw they loved the Savage and Elizabeth had for each other, and were willing to forgive him for everything he did and get him back in the ring after Jake Roberts attacked him. So that's a huge moment for them. Almost overshadowed the match with Warrior as well, because Warrior just disappeared right after he beat Savage so that they could do that part. They're going against Virgil is a Man. Now, as we know, Virgil was the sidekick, servant, whatever we want to call him, of Ted DiBiase, flashing the money, paying off people, interfering on Ted's behalf. And finally, he started getting treated really, really bad publicly. Piper was trying to encourage him to say, hey, you don't deserve to be treated like this. They were having talks. And it all came to a head at Royal Rumble 91 when Virgil and Ted DiBiase were doing their tag team match against the Rhodes family, Dustin and Dusty. And after the match ended, the belt was on the ground, and Ted ordered him to pick up the belt and give it to him. And Virgil was already being stubborn and stuff like that. And Virgil picked it up. Got down on his knee to pick it up. And Ted gloated about, see what my money can do, blah, 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 blah. And then Virgil got up and waffled him with the $1 million championship. And Piper was elated. And I think it was supposed to lead into Piper against DiBiase at WrestleMania, but Piper got into a motorcycle accident, so they had Virgil and DiBiase go against each other. The unfortunate part is, as much as it was good, the turn, what they did with Mike Jones or Virgil, as far as making him very much an underdog and not knowing how to wrestle, it seemed, and just lucking out and beating Haku and stuff like that, it didn't do much for him career-wise. He even got squashed by Yokozuna at Survivor Series. So the face turn was very stuck in mid-card. The Savage and Elizabeth carried on from WrestleMania into his getting back into the ring. Sorry, Virgil. Savage wins in my case. Chris Maloney.
So this lady right here is going to get a little more airtime. So if you can see this, and I know there's no copyrights as far as images go on as far as YouTube goes, but yeah, that sums it up right there. And for those people,
there was also the kid with the yellow hat.
Need an everlasting look that lady right there, okay? I know you can't, I don't know her friggin' name, but she's been iconic basically since 1990, 1991, I think it's been. But as much as fans wanted to see Virgil turn against the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and feud, and then the whole Piper aspect of it, you can't beat Savage and Liz for everything that had taken place. I mean, this goes way back to the Mega Powers forming, to the Mega Powers exploding, to Savage aligning himself with Sherry, to his feud with Dusty and Sapphire, into the iconic retirement match between him and the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior with that that foot on Savage's chest with his arm raised up in the air, and then the aftermath. And of course, like I said, you got this lady that was part of the aftermath as well. But yeah, too much of an iconic moment right there. And the fact is, they had continued Savage and Liz post that, obviously into the feud with Jake the Snake Roberts and the Undertaker and Tuesday in Texas and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, hands down, Savage and Liz reuniting. So Jones.
Well, Savage and Liz, the match is fantastic. It actually makes you kind of go, Warrior can wrestle with another guy if the other guy is Savage. That's fantastic. A really great match. Now that woman there, I'm surprised you went with her and not the other one, which is okay. Is that a kid in a genie's outfit or what's going on here?
Yeah, that's
the other one is like really freaking weird. And that's what I remember about that one the most, really. But it is it's done well. Monsoon and Heenan do sell it very well. The Virgil as a man, I think the problem with that one was, as Arn Anderson said, it was like a popcorn fart afterwards. It didn't. What he needed was like either a manager himself or a father figure. And actually, I really think that if they would have brought in, say, someone like Kamala as Virgil's like dad or mentor or something, I think that would have been really, really beneficial to Virgil. And of course, I can say this because you can't see my face smiling. But yeah, Savage and Liz gets that one. But I will say with that one, I think there's going to be issues in the other rounds because as great as that was, it meant Dick. It meant Dick. We all know they got divorced and all that other shit. And he becomes unretired like within a year. So it was kind of like, it was great. I'm trying to think like a movie or TV show where, like actually how some people thought when Roseanne ended, when it was, most of it was just made up of what happened. If you ever see the last episode, a lot of people didn't like it. Same thing with Seinfeld, how it ended and pissed people off. This kind of pisses me off when I look back because it's like, it was all for nothing. It was all for nothing because they didn't end up happily ever after. But it would be a 3-0 for that.
Awesome. So he advances to the next round, and that brings us to match number 5 with Andre the Giant getting slapped by Heenan, taking on Daniel Bryan, leaving the Wyatts. Chris Maloney.
So here's a fact. I didn't know the other lady existed until today. You type in WrestleMania 7 lady on Google. That is not the lady that comes up. And
that's the one I think of.
That's the kid.
No, I think of the other lady immediately. The whole big.
What is he wearing? Or she? Like, what is it wearing?
It was 91, like so it could be anything. Anyways, yeah. So we go into Daniel Bryan, Bray Wyatt versus Andre the Giant and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Again, sentimental aspect is this. So you got Andre the Giant, Bobby the Brain Heenan, April 1st, Skydome, WrestleMania. It's tough because as an Andre the Giant fan, pretty much since the time I began watching wrestling, it was awesome to see him turn back into a face. Downside about it is when you look at the legacy of Andre the Giant, he was hurting so bad at that point. It went from basically that into Haku basically selling like a gangster for him, into becoming the sidekick manager for the Bushwhackers post that. So Andre never really got his due after basically chewing out Bobby the Brain Heenan at Skydome there. When you think of the other moment, I marked out, like, it's one of those moments in wrestling history where, to me as a fan, I get invested in it. And the Bray Wyatt character, all the way from Husky Harris to Bray Wyatt to getting Daniel Bryan involved in this and that, and all of a sudden the steel cage match on Monday Night Raw. And it's like, you want to go and jump through the TV and beat the hell out of Bray Wyatt. And that's how I felt for Daniel Bryan back then, And to fans that don't know about it, the actual date was January 13th, 2014. So we're talking over 6.5 years ago. But I still remember getting the goosebumps. I still remember getting the chills. I still remember watching Daniel Bryan kick the living hell out of Bray Wyatt and all of a sudden doing the yes thing again. And it's like, holy crap, it was absolutely amazing. And it's one of those moments that stand out on Raw, like we were talking about Batista earlier on. The fact is, when it comes down to it, as much as I loved Andre the Giant, as much as I'd love to see him, turn back face against Bobby the Brain Heenan, the guy who turned him heel, so to speak. The fact is that Daniel Bryan versus Bray Wyatt, Daniel Bryan stood out more to me because symbolic-wise, it meant more to his career, meant more to the career of Bray Wyatt than it did Andre the Giant turning back to being the coming-up face against Bobby the Brain Heenan, because obviously Andre's legacy was pretty much done at that point. So I got to go Daniel Bryan, Bray Wyatt.
Interesting.
Okay, so when the Bryan Wyatt thing happened, that was about a year before I gave up on WWE as far as watching it on a regular basis. I'll still catch a little bit once in a while. And if they ever come back to town, I'd probably go see them. But anyways, enough on selling them. The Bryan leaves the Wyatt one. The problem I have with that one, and even when I seen it, was we already knew that was going to happen. It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a shock. To me, he wasn't bad. He was pretending to be bad so he could get back at Wyatt. That was the whole thing. It was, the beatdown was great, in the cage and all that. But to me, I didn't buy that Bryan was any part of the Wyatts. Yeah, he just acted that whole thing out. So to me, it was weak as far as it being a big moment, because they set it up obviously to the public that this is what was going to happen. That's why I don't like that one. The Heenan slaps Andre one, the reason why I like that one, and we're going to a tiebreaker, is because that was what was really great about that. Is no matter how sad it was to see, Andre doing these horrible chops and stuff like that, that when he got on the little friggin' transporter thing, whatever they called it, that was the little ring, which is kind of interesting because the story back at WrestleMania 3, when they introduced that is the guy, the guy that actually made those things for them. He's the one that being their lead ring technician who reinvented their rings for them. Anyways, the Heenan one is when he got on that transporter thing. That was WrestleMania 3. Him leaving, that's where his career should have ended, or at least his regular career. He could have, done Rumbles or whatever, but so for them to have it where he's just on that thing, he's got rid of the garbage, and you can see that I think he's kind of happy. And for me, it was just like a flashback to WrestleMania 3. That's how it should have ended. So for me, the Heenan slaps Andre one, as poorly as it might have kind of looked because Andre wasn't, in shape for years and stuff like that, but it's still, I think it was a good end to what was a miserable few years watching the Giant. Because the Giant I seen was still cool, but I mean, when I seen him was when he was already in his downfall. So again, that moment of him going back to WrestleMania 3, I think that one for me is the one that wins it.
Okay, so I get to break the tie on here. I am a huge fan of also Daniel Bryan. But at the same time, he was only with the Wyatts, forced into being with the Wyatts for 2 weeks before the actual turn happened. It was very short-lived where he was in that jumpsuit, looking very homeless, and then turning. The moment was amazing. I cannot knock that one. The yes chants in the cage, the whole arena going wild was. Oh, Maloney has a sad face already, but the moment was a truly awesome moment in Raw history. You see that still used in videos. Even the next one they did when fans actually clamored around the ring and got there, that was even bigger than that. And I think that was a couple weeks later on Raw. Huge match moments. Andre the Giant going face after 3 years of being a heel. Unfortunately, his heel run was not that great because, as Jonesy said, his health was just horrible. His last run with Haku being Colossal Connection holding the title, that was basically Haku doing everything and Andre just doing a couple of moves and they're done. The only upside to that face turn, thanks to Haku kicking him in the face and Andre getting slapped by Heenan, was that it closed a chapter in the career of Andre the Giant. I don't believe we ever saw him in the ring again. There might have been one more match they did in Japan or something like that, but we never really saw him perform again. Unfortunately, they did do that angle with Earthquake taking out his leg and then him showing up on crutches with the Bushwhackers. And that was his last appearance with WWF. And he showed up at the Clash of Champions 20th anniversary on TBS just afterwards. I think Vince McMahon always regrets how things ended with Andre before his passing. And Andre's passing was the initial reason and only induction in 1993 when he passed away. And that was the formation of the Hall of Fame. And then it grew from there and now is an annual event. So I'm going to go with Andre winning at least this first round. I don't know if it's going to go any further, but I'm going to give the nod to Andre in the first round.
And he did have about 5 other matches after that Japan. I remember one of the other tournaments, I looked Andre up and I was surprised to see how many other matches he did actually after that, which was like, oh, so you just stood on the ring apron some more.
Pretty much. So that takes us to match number 6. Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18 taking on Chris Jericho, making the list. Jonesy.
Okay. So the Hogan WrestleMania 18, I'm sure everyone knows the story on this one, but I'll kind of run through it. So it kind of begins with Hogan asked Hall and Nash not to interfere. And then Nash tells Hall that they're going to interfere if they have to, you know. So you can kind of see they're setting up where Hogan could turn, he may not turn, who knows. But it's basically Hogan saying, I want to do this on my own for once. So anyways, Hogan and Rock, it was a slow start to the match, but I think it was needed for the crowd to kind of settle down and get into it in the same point, because they were kind of already into it. But I was there. I was up in the nosebleed. I was really close to the Jumbotron. But that match, there's no other match that I've been to that had that energy. And being up that high, it's a different type of feel, because things are a little delayed, but the sound, you don't hear it as loud, but you can hear the rumble. It's like a thunderstorm happening. And it was amazing how much energy there was down below. Up above, it was quiet. It was really quiet. In my whole section, pretty much the whole event, everyone was quiet. It was more like being like at home watching. It was because it was so far away. You felt like you were there, but you were kind of, you didn't have good seats. But I could still see what was going on, and it was fun. So anyways, Hogan loses the match. Then the shake hands, and then the Hall Nash come down and try to beat piss out of Hogan and yada yada yada. Hogan and Rock do a pose down. It's really kind of neat that both times that Hogan has done a big event in Skydome that he's lost both times. But Hogan's character shows that he can take a loss, except when it's at a Royal Rumble. But that one is a pretty big moment, and for me, it's the energy, not really to take what happened, but it's that energy that really, and you hear it from announcers and everyone that was, there was nothing like that, and it's true. It was a different energy. The Jericho makes the list. I'm going to actually, if Sean doesn't mind, he can run down this one because he remembers it more. I did a bunch of how it went out, but I think he can explain it better than me. That one, whoop-de-doo. To me, I watched it. I wasn't watching wrestling at the time when that happened. And it's your basic turn. That's all it was. And it was already set up because he already had it in the box. To me, it was kind of sloppy. It was stupid. It's like, well, you're already playing this from the beginning. So it was. I think it was one of the badder turns I've seen as far as planning. It was. I didn't like it at all. And what was it? Was that supposed to be a TV that broke so easily that looked like it was like made out of some cardboard? It was awful. Whatever. Like whoever came up with that crappy prop. So Hogan is for me on that one.
Okay, so Hogan gets that one. Well, we were talking about the Festival of Friendship that was going on with the whole Jericho turn. Jericho and Owens had been running roughshod basically over Raw, two of the biggest heels going at that time, and they just there was this need of Jericho to give stuff to Kevin, and he had all these gifts to give him to say how they are with friendship. They even had the cherubs and their faces on them that we see in the top of a church painting, the odd sculpture that was given to him. And then Kevin Owens appreciated all the gifts that Jericho had for him, and even got one for him for Jericho from him, Kevin. And he gave Jericho the box, and Jericho was like, oh my God, this is awesome. A brand new list. My other list was getting filled out. And when you saw him take it out of the box, the audience saw that the bottom of it said list of KO. And just the reaction that was going on, dead silence. And Jericho catches on that there's something up and looks at the bottom and notices, oh, that's the list of KO. What's going on here? And then, Kevin Owens takes him out. And that was basically Jericho's face turn, which set up their eventual matchup against each other. We're going against Hogan, though, and the weird part was they'd even done a transport truck running through the Rock and putting him into an ambulance, and that's where the truck hit him after they'd used tools on the Rock. And they did everything heinous to be the NWO taking out the most electrifying man in entertainment. But when you got to Toronto, even FanFest access before that, people were chanting Hogan. It was Toronto, Bizarro Land, yes. But they felt the energy when they were in the ring. If you go back and look on YouTube, both Hogan and Rock just recently did a video talking about what the behind the scenes was, and they basically told how they felt the energy of the crowd, and Rock ended up selling the push off by Hogan as though he was the chicken shit heel, and Hogan was the big baby face. And so they ended up working that way, eventually worked their way back to Rock being the good guy. But then Hogan suddenly aged like 10 years in that match, looking old and decrepit and bent over, and the defeated champion handing over the torch, shaking the hand. And of course, in good old Hogan fashion, as Bruce Pritchard would say, that Hogan must pose. And Hogan got his spotlight after Hall and Nash, the Outsiders, ended up solidifying Hogan's face turn the next night in Montreal. The longest and loudest standing ovation and cheering for Hogan ever. He was back in the red and yellow, and yeah, he never went back to being a heel with WWE, except for in real life. But we won't go there. But at least in the WWE ring, he was back being a face. Just everything that happened, and then the following night, I gotta give it to Hogan. That's not going to be a hard choice. I did like the Festival of Friendship and the turn that happened, but is it a sweep, Chris Maloney?
Hell yeah! How do you go against Hogan and Rock?
Exactly.
So I tell you this: the other historical aspect is this. So Hogan is 0-2 as far as WrestleManias in Toronto go, and against two of my favorites of all time, The Ultimate Warrior and The Rock. But it's the Festival of Friendship was cool. The way it played out wasn't, because of the fact is it was supposed to be Jericho, Owens, semi or even main event at WrestleMania for the Universal Championship, and then all of a sudden you get the Goldberg aspect that took part, and Jericho had his issues back with Goldberg back in WCW, so. You know, it is what it is. But any other match, they might have had a chance. But Hogan Rock, WrestleMania, I was there. I had floor seats. You know what I mean?
I was 18 rows off the floor right at the hard camera.
Yeah, so Sean had better seats than me, because in saying that, this was back in 2002. So the generation of anybody and everybody brings a sign. So I think I might have been 18 to 20 rows back on the floor, which was absolutely amazing when nobody was standing up, when nobody was holding a damn sign. But the moment that started happening, and all of a sudden you realize you spent a couple $100s on a WrestleMania floor seat, I spent the whole duration of WrestleMania pretty much in the aisle. I had a good camera, so I went to take good shots. But the fact is, I wasn't going to sit there and basically pay all that money to not see the event. So it was kind of cool. I had at one point Maven and Spike Dudley, I think it was, and Goldust running right by me because I was out in the aisle, and security luckily let me be out there as long as I wasn't interfering in anybody's viewpoint. But yeah, I get to see that, and I remember looking around at the whole entire Sky Dome, the 68,000 or whatever it was, and basically being, holy crap, this is absolutely amazing. The Rumble, the watching Hogan come out to the NWO music and be like, hey, crap, I get to see Hulk Hogan as NWO Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And then in the match, it's like, holy crap, is this actually happening? You know what I mean? And then do yourselves a favor. WrestleMania 18, Hogan versus Rock. Go back and watch the match on YouTube. Find the DVD, whatever the case may be. Watch that match. Listen to Jerry Lawler's and Jim Ross's reaction. But the fact is, they don't do justice to the crowd. And the crowd was absolutely amazing. And the way that Sean had played it up with regards to Raw the next night in Montreal and the standing ovation that he got. But the fact is, that moment, to me, I think takes this whole entire tournament. So we'll have to wait and see if anybody beats it.
We'll have to see. And what was I going to say? The interesting part of the whole Hogan Rock match, if you have that match on mute, it's nothing. You have to have the volume on, hearing that crowd, hearing Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, and it puts it all together. Without it, it's just, Hogan and Rock. Not the best technically sound match, but everything else comes together and makes it amazing. That moves us on to our next match, number 7, and that is the Patriotic Slam by Lex Luger on Yokozuna and The Undertaker turning face. I'm going to start with Lex Luger. Hulk Hogan had just won back the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 9 in about a minute and 20 some odd seconds after Yokozuna had just defeated Bret Hart for it. Got salt in the eyes. Yokozuna then ended up challenging Hogan for the title at King of the Ring, the very first one in 93. Due to some shenanigans, thanks to Harvey Whippleman all dressed up in a disguise and flash paper, which Hogan loves to use flash paper, got in his eyes. Yoko gets the title. Hogan disappears from WWF and eventually goes to WCW. Yokozuna has the title and is saying that he's the greatest person around because he's the one who took out Hulkamania. He killed Hulkamania. He also spits in the face of every American because of the patriotic style of Hogan, always waving the red, white, and blue. And so just to rub it in America's face even more, Yokozuna gets a body slam challenge because Hogan could not body slam him either. Issues a body slam challenge on the 4th of July on the USS Intrepid in the New York area. You can see the Statue of Liberty in the background and everything. Twin Towers. It was all there. And he issued a challenge to slam. People from the NFL were there. The Steiners, Crush, Randy Savage, a whole bunch of people just trying to slam Yoko, and all of them fail. And then just as Mr. Fuji and everybody were going to declare Yoko the winner and nobody could defeat him, this helicopter shows up and everybody wonders what's going on. Who's in the helicopter? Who's coming? And off comes Lex Luger, the former narcissist, wearing a American flag t-shirt, makes his way to the ring, confronts Yoko, and unlike other people who didn't take a shot at Yoko physically, there was a little bit of an altercation and touching and hitting at that point, which allowed the momentum of Yoko coming at Luger for him to pick him up, and people say it was a hip toss, then a body slam, but he ended up slamming Yokozuna, celebrating for America. Steiners were in there, Savage, everybody's waving flags, happy as can be, and eventually Luger ends up challenging Yokozuna for the world title for SummerSlam, hops on a bus, goes coast to coast in the U.S., hugging women, kissing babies, shaking hands, all for a count-out victory at the Palace of Auburn Hills against Yokozuna. Whoop-dee-doo. It was wonderful the moment that he slammed him. The payoff was crap. So somehow along the line, Vince obviously lost faith in Luger for being the replacement for Hulk Hogan. And it was very short order because that was July. And by the end of August, it was in the shitter. So he's taking on The Undertaker, turning face. Undertaker came in 1990. He had Survivor Series, part of Brother Love on the Ted DiBiase team. He ended up being managed by Paul Bearer. Ended up teaming up with Jake Roberts. As we saw last week, he was part of the reason why Jake Roberts turned heel on the Warrior. And they had that feud. And then Jake got involved with Savage. Both of them were at the reception when the snake went after Savage and Elizabeth, and Sid was there to fend them off. Come December, after Savage was reinstated, and Tuesday Night in Texas happened, and then they had a Friday night's main event. Actually, I believe that was in February because they always did the main event in February. Savage had just beaten Jake. Jake ended up slithering backstage, waited for Savage and Elizabeth to come through the curtain, had a chair ready. He didn't care which one was coming through. And just as they came through the curtain, he was about to swing. Undertaker grabs a chair and stops him. Savage is able to take out Jake. And they end that show with Taker and Paul Bearer looking down at Jake without any explanation. Then on Superstars, we get our final explanation in the funeral parlor when Jake calls out Undertaker when Paul Bearer is interviewing him. Taker comes out of the one casket that's setting up. He's confronted by Jake, wondering whose side is he on, and Taker says, "Not yours." And that's when all hell breaks loose. The urn is used on Undertaker. His hand gets locked into a casket, and Jake keeps on beating him down with the chair, and Taker just keeps on coming at Jake, dragging the casket behind him with his hand stuck in it. So that solidified Taker's face turn, and of course he jumbled back and forth after that, but he had a long run as a face before going back heel. That was a huge moment. Comparing the two and the legacy that it has, I'm going with Taker turning face. Chris Maloney.
So it's interesting that you got two of the biggest moments as far as wrestling careers go, leading up to two of the weakest matches in the history of wrestling. So Yokozuna, Lex Luger. Basically, Lex Luger was down and out. The biggest comparison Vince McMahon would have had to Hulk Hogan, calling it the Lex Express, the red, white, and blue, yada, yada, yada. You know, you guys want to do yourself a favor in 2020? Google Lex Luger, WWF face, and you'll see his career went nowhere after that body slam. Taker, on the other hand, his career absolutely went somewhere after that moment with Jake the Snake Roberts, Randy Macho Man Savage, and Miss Elizabeth. But the fact is, their WrestleMania 8 match wasn't the greatest.
Jake wasn't in the best space either.
Yeah, so very weak. I'll never forget the Undertaker hitting the tombstone on the outside of the ring, and I think his head was like 2 feet above the the floor out there. But long story short is this: when you compare the moments, the fact is Lex Luger soon enough went back to WCW Monday Night Show. The Mall of America, so to speak. That moment overshadowed anything he did WWE based. Taker, Sean had said, face turns, heel turns, regardless of the fact. But the fact is, I remember that moment like it was yesterday, and it's like, holy crap, the Undertaker saving Macho Man and Liz. And Sean was right. He was like, Jake the Snake was backstage, and they cut in scenes. So it was like they'd go to the ring, see Macho Man and Elizabeth coming back, and all of a sudden you see Jake in the background. They'd be like, I don't care who comes back first. I'm going to end up, nailing whoever it is. And here, I think Liz ended up coming first, and she ended up ducking. And Savage kind of put her out of the way. And Savage was ready to take that chair shot. But the fact is, Taker ended up grabbing the chair, and the rest is kind of history. But I'm going to go Taker.
Urgent as well with the fact that they thought the show was off. And Heenan and Vince were like, "Are we off? What's going on? Get somebody back there to stop this." So yeah, so added more drama.
Very, as far as moments go, very similar to the Hogan Beefcake, Miss Liz Macho Man thing, where all of a sudden it was kind of one big cluster in the back. But and the announcers were playing it up as well. But the fact is, it's like I said, I got to go Taker. So Taker 2-0.
Chris Jones.
It's funny that something is kind of brought up here that last week the Sami Zayn match, whole situation there that won over Andre. It was so shocking. Sorry, it wasn't that match. No, it wasn't that one. It was a different one. Oh God, which one was that? Anyways, it doesn't matter. The fact that they had the copyright and all that come up, and then all this went down. Last week, someone said, "Oh, they hadn't really done that before." Well, look at this. We see that they did. So that's another thing that just doesn't matter. Yeah. So, I don't know if I actually seen that happen when it happened. I knew it happened, but I don't know if I watched that actual Saturday night thing because I don't remember the way it went down, but I remember it happened. Anyways, the Luger one, I do like, because it is one of the most beautiful scenery that they've had, where this ring is on a ship and you can see all the buildings, the Statue of Liberty, the helicopter comes in. But again, yeah, it ends where it's like, well, that went absolutely nowhere after that. But when Fuji spit, now they said on him, he didn't spit on him, he spit more at his shoe, or sorry, his wrestling boot. But that was kind of like spitting on the American flag, because that's how Luger was dressed up, like American flag. And it wasn't a hip toss. That was a slam. As awkward as it looked, Luger really did well in that, because Yoko gave him enough jump for him to get him up. But for him to turn him, he couldn't turn him like he normally would, or he would have killed Yokozuna with him landing on his head. So he does this kind of a half lift and then turns Yoko and then puts him down, and he's got him by both hands. So it is a slam. It's just an awkward slam, but it still looked good. And I must say, there's got to be other matches that happened that day on there, because that was a full setup. They had the all the guardrails there. They had, like, everything was there. So there had to have been some other matches. I don't know if you know if there is, but it seems like they did a full event on there, or at least a couple of matches. But yeah, that one's the Undertaker one.
So you're voting Undertaker?
I sure do.
Okie dokie. So that takes out that and leads us to our final match of round number 1. And Chris Maloney. Jake Roberts takes a guitar shot from Honky Tonk Man versus Savage forming the Mega Powers with Hulk Hogan.
You know, if you go onto YouTube and actually go and type in Mega Powers formation, you get a treat, because not only you get to see them join up, you get to see that backstage interview, but you also get to see that infamous pile driver video of Hulk Hogan dressed up in the construction hat and Coco Beware singing the lyrics there. So it's a 3-for-1 right there. But with regards to this, so it's funny how much these date back. I can remember stuff that happens back in like 1986, 1987, like it's clear as mud. But John Cena turning face 2003, forget about it. So anyway, backstory is this. So Jake the Snake Roberts has his own kind of Piper's Pit, known as the Snake Pit. So he's doing interviews on his show, invites the Colonel, Jimmy the Mouth of the South Heart on the show, the Honky Tonk Man as well. I think from what I remember, Jake had made fun of Honky, kind of chased him off with the snake. Honky does a turnaround, ends up coming kind of behind Jake and slams the guitar in the back of his head, then to his back. A long story short is this. Apparently it was legit, so the guitar wasn't gimmicked. There's a lot of kind of shoot interview footage from Jake talking about picking out of the splinters out of his back about a week later. Long story short is basically it sets up a WrestleMania match. Jake the Snake Roberts with Alice Cooper in his corner, taking on Honky Tonk Man with Mouth of the South in his corner. 93,000 people, one of probably the top 3 or 4 matches, probably as far as WrestleMania went that year. So WrestleMania 3, Hogan Andre obviously was the headline. So you take that. It was a career turn for Jake the Snake Roberts, who WrestleMania, who was he? WrestleMania 1, it was George Wells. Who did he face?
WrestleMania 2.
WrestleMania 2 was George Wells?
Yeah, because all you heard was Susan St. James going, "Come on, George! Come on, George!"
Okay, so it was WrestleMania 2, and the I remember it's Jake the Snake DDT's Snake comes out, and you see the foam coming up from George Wells' mouth, which made kind of an iconic moment at WrestleMania 2. So fast forward to WrestleMania 3, Jake the Snake Roberts goes in as the face against the Honky Tonk Man, Alice Cooper in his corner. So absolutely an amazing moment for rock and wrestling. Then you go against the Mega Powers, which Sean's favorite moment in the history of wrestling, where Macho Man decides to say, "Hey, I'm going to shake the hand of Hulk Hogan." But there was a lot of storyline with it regards to it. because it was basically Savage and Honky again in one of these moments in the ring, and Savage vying for the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously, getting outnumbered. Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Honky Tonk Man, Savage all in the ring together. Hulk Hogan comes down, beats up on the Hart Foundation. Elizabeth had ran down after she got pushed aside by Honky. Brings up Hulk Hogan. Hogan comes in the ring, saves Macho Man. They do the whole back-to-back thing, turn around, look like they're going to face each other. Savage reaches out, the handshake, heard around the world, so to speak. Remember that like it was yesterday as well. And then all of a sudden, they shake hands, and Savage got that look like he just seen Santa Claus for the first time in his face, And then they do the backstage promo, and Savage Hogan do the handshake again. Mean Gene's there, Liz is there, and the Mega Powers form, obviously, leading into WrestleMania 4, SummerSlam 88, WrestleMania 5, so to speak. On the other side of things, the flip side of things, I talked about Hogan and Rock. This is up there too. So I guarantee one of these two is going to the finals, and they happen to be, I think, they are same bottom bracket. So it's one's going to beat the other. So, but I got to go with Mega Powers for sure.
Jonesy.
Well, the Jake takes a guitar shot. Jake deserved that. It's funny how a good guy character can be such a dick and people cheer, and Honky's just trying to, he's just trying so hard because he thinks he's good, but we know he's not. But you got to respect the fact that he ignores Jake for most of it, but then Jake pushes too much. And I'm glad that Jake fucked his back and had splinters coming out of there, because Honky is awesome, and for him to treat Honky that way, that was bullshit. That was just bullshit. The Mega Powers form. Well, there is a question in there, and that did Hogan actually know what was going on? That what Honky just did to Liz? Because that part didn't make sense when she is bringing Hogan out, and Hogan's like, they're attached by the arm, and then all of a sudden Hogan looks in the ring, and but he didn't see what happened with Liz and all that. So it's kind of like, I think they dropped the ball on that part, as far as if you're, trying to make sense out of actually what's going on. The eyes was awesome, but it was kind of like, that would have only been if we seen that she went back and went, "Honey, just pushed me over," and all that. But then he would have ran out. Liz wouldn't have had to drag him there. So you know what? Jake's hitting my vote on this one, because I believe that was a huge mistake. No, I'm just kidding. The Mega Powers win that. But still, that moment there, do you think that Hogan actually, because Hogan didn't know, not the way that they put it. So he just went down there because she dragged him out and seen her man was down. I don't know. It didn't make it as strong as it could have been. Because my God, Hunky fucking like put her hands on Liz and shoved her down. That was pretty like, my God, that was great back then.
That was sacred ground. Elizabeth had never taken anything before that. Well, other than George Steele running off with her, wanting to do sort of a King Kong and damsel in distress type deal, but her taking that bump, being thrown down, and breaking the strap on her dress. Hogan, as you said, didn't really know why he was being dragged down there. He's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then he looks up and sees that Savage is being beat up by 3 other guys, and he's just like, "Oh, I gotta come to the rescue," in that way, and be the big hero in stopping injustice. But he, as you said, he didn't seem to know or care that Elizabeth was injured or had been abused. Jake Roberts, that one, he, I guess, credits that, or unfortunately puts that as the downward spiral of his life and everything, taking that guitar shot, because it was not gimmicked at all, and caused the reason for him to get hooked on painkillers and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate that moment is where he says his life went basically in the shitter. I can't deny the Mega Powers. Come on, big moment. The handshake, can't go wrong with that one. It is advancing in a sweep. So then,
I have a question about that one too. With Liz, she broke her strap when she came back out in that celebration. Was the strap fixed?
No, I don't believe so.
No, it was still broken.
Okay.
They didn't have time to fix that. So that concludes round number 1. I'm not sure if because Jonesy's on a phone and we're not able to see him, if he can run down what happened. So, Chris Maloney, can you tell us what happened in the first round?
Do you want me to do it without my unsmiley face?
Yes.
All right, hold on a sec.
I got the thing up beside you on our screen.
No, you just want me. Okay, I'll do it that way. Anyways, I went 7 for 8, which was kind of cool. But we got CM Punk's pipe bomb 2-1 over Randy Orton getting the thumbs down. Batista leaving Evolution gets a 3-0 vote over Cena's being a team player. Where we hear Austin won't give up gets a 3-0 vote over Boss Man can't be bought by $1 Million Man. Savage and Liz reunite, and the iconic WrestleMania 7 lady goes along with that. Defeating Virgil is a man, 3-0. Heenan slaps Andre 2-1 over Bryan, leaving the Wyatts. That was my only fall right there. Hogan at WrestleMania 8 3-0 over Jericho makes the list. Wow, a lot of 3-0s. Holy crap. Undertaker saves Liz and Savage. That's a 3-0 vote over the Lex Express. And then Mega Powers Forum gets a 3-0 vote over Jake. Jake takes a guitar shot from the Honky Tonk Man. So, again, my only surprise is Bryan leaving the Wyatts, because as we were doing this thing, I was watching that video clip again, watching it, getting excited, getting goosebumps, and then you guys shut it down. So, fuck that.
Well, that's why we have 3
Yeah.
It happens.
Sweet victory. Sweet.
I love that moment with Daniel Bryan as well. But when you look at the fact that it was only 2 weeks that he was with the Wyatts doing the whole heel thing, you knew it was coming. It was very telegraphed.
But dude, look at what it led into. Think about it this way. Think about the year. What year was it? WrestleMania 30, 2014. That whole climax. This was bigger than Savage Hogan, easily.
I get that. But at the same time, Andre turning face after how he turned heel on Hogan and going out the way he did at WrestleMania 6.
Wait. Did you just say that Bryan thing was more powerful than what did you say was more powerful than the Savage thing?
No. I said Bryan's iconic moment leading into WrestleMania 30 and the whole title thing was more iconic to me than Savage Hogan and that whole build-up.
Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, well, hey, Andre loses, Bryan loses.
I'll tell you this, it'll be interesting to see from the top of the bracket who makes it down, because it's either going to be Mega Powers or basically Hogan Rock in the finals from the bottom bracket. So I don't know if there's anything up top that's going to be able to beat those two.
Oh, well, let's see how it shakes out with match number 1 of the round 2. CM Punk against Batista. Chris Jones.
Like I said, the thing that really sticks out for the CM Punk thing is the fact that he, unlike pretty much every single one of these things, the person that was doing the turn didn't lay a hand on the other guy. All he did was talk. That's all he did was talk. But he talked about stuff that normally you wouldn't hear, and the fact that McMahon and company allowed him to do that and gave him the freedom to do that and have the safe word, which was, hey, I'm going to tell a personal story. And then that one sticks out much more than Batista's. So for me, the pipe bomb was unique. I can't say that it gave me goosebumps, but artistically they did something that you pretty much don't see, and it worked, and it worked big. And I mean, I think CM Punk means a lot more to the WWF crowd than Batista does to them. So CM Punk to me wins this one.
Yeah, I'm going to concur with that one. So we'll find out what Maloney is going to say, if it's a sweep or not. But CM Punk doing that was very unexpected, considering he was a heel going against Cena, and they were setting up for their ladder match at the Money in the Bank and all that. But it kind of played on the internet wrestling community. People knew that his contract was ending. Him revealing, breaking down that fourth wall and revealing things, and what he said was definitely playing to the internet wrestling fans, the smart marks, the ones who follow everything going on. The casual fans listening and watching it were shocked and going, "Oh," and maybe tuned in because of that the next week to see what was going to happen, because you never saw stuff like that happen before. The Batista turning face was very much telegraphed because of everything that was going on with Flair and Triple H before that judgment of thumbs up, thumbs down, who was I going to sign a contract with for WrestleMania. Fans knew that it was coming, and then they even let the fans see that Batista knew it was coming. So the decision that happened that night in the ring on Monday Night Raw was not a big shock, but it was the culmination of what people expected to happen, and it did happen the way people hoped it would. Punk, as I said, was very unexpected and caused a bit more of a tidal wave of reaction and carried on further. Chris?
2-1. I can't go Punk. It's as much as it, like I said, lit up the internet and pretty much lasted for probably a good couple of weeks. The Batista thing, I think, career-wise meant more. And to me, as a wrestling fan, I got to say Batista stands out a lot more turning face, especially back then, than Punk in his pipe bomb, because he had already had a legacy. And then to watch the career that he had post pipe bomb wasn't the greatest. So anyways, I got to go, like I said, 2-1.
Okay. Match number 2 in round number 2 has two of my all-time favorites going against each other, and it is Steve Austin against Randy Savage. Savage, the retirement, reuniting with Elizabeth, Steve Austin bleeding, never giving up, rocket strapped to his back. He sold more merchandise than Hogan ever. I'm going to go Austin on this one. There's still a chance for Savage to survive and maybe meet Austin again in the finals, but we'll have to wait and see what happens leading up to that. But I am going to go with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Maloney.
So, and what many people would judge it a dream match, so to speak, Austin Punk is what's taking place next round. Jones?
Huh. It is a hard one because, I mean, I want to go with the Savage one because that was really well done. It led up to the wedding and all that other stuff. But again, the fact that it was a retirement match, and then he comes out of retirement like within 6 months, and it just kind of makes a lot of that, waste. But the story of Liz and Macho Man never really showing his feelings for her up until that point, and it's amazing that he didn't wrestle at that time anymore, and he was like he had like kind of the main event to SummerSlam. I mean, that's pretty, and the fact that it was a wedding, that there was no interference. The fact that fans actually, like, I honestly, I don't think I would have stuck around for that as a fan. Maybe I would, because I would have been younger in that and just want to see it. But like, I didn't stick around for the final match for WrestleMania 18 because I didn't give a shit. And I'd rather get out of there before the crowds got too much outside. So it's a hard one, but I think the Austin one deserves it more because of it's hard, but I gotta go with Austin on it. I do. Because that really, I think, solidified him as being the guy. They kind of passed the torch on that, and in the end, the Savage one is just about a woman. Sorry, I know. So for me, I have to go with Austin, even though I want to go with
later,
Savage.
and this lady's crying again.
Yeah, I know she's crying again. So is the Gypsy boy.
Yeah, he's crying. No, Steve Austin is definitely going at that. Like, that was actually the only wedding probably in WWE history. Okay, maybe other than Triple H and Stephanie's drive-through wedding, that was never interrupted or had something. They waited until the reception. So that leads us to Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan. Chris Maloney.
Toronto WrestleMania versus Toronto WrestleMania. But as I said in my thoughts earlier, Andre Heenan doesn't stand up to Hogan Rock, so Hogan Rock for sure.
This one's, I think, going to be easy, but the Andre one still sticks out for me. But with Hogan, it was kind of the same thing. It was kind of like Hogan kind of passing the torch and saying goodbye, but only to his former kind of bad guy and everything, how old he looked at the end of it. But it's amazing. That's one thing I like about Hogan, even though I don't like the character Hogan, the guy that played Hogan, the fact that he showed his character's vulnerability and the fact that he was aging. And it was like kind of seeing the old Hogan kind of going to The Rock. I gave it, the best, and going to shake his hand, and another famous handshake. The Andre one, though, it tugs at my heartstrings because it was really good to see that he got that chance to basically be the only one out there and waving goodbyes. So I really like that one. But history-wise, the Hogan one, for me, it just, it's hard. You know what? I got to go with Andre. I got to go with Andre on this because his career turned into shit as far as wrestling, and it's like seeing, a band that used to be good and now they're up there and you're like, ugh. I think for memory's sake and him, I like the Andre one better. So I'm going with Andre because I can vote on that.
Okay, well, I am, I guess, the tiebreaker on this one. And, yeah, I didn't think Andre was going to make it much further, and he's not going to make it much further. Hogan, WrestleMania 18, I was there. Not a fan of Hogan, really, because I've said it numerous times on different podcasts. He showed up on 18. I was not overly happy about it. But Hogan is going to beat Andre the Giant again at this. So that brings us to our final match of round number 2. And Jonesy, The Undertaker, taking on Macho Man Randy Savage, this time with the Mega Powers forming.
Yeah, you know what? I think if this was the other Mega Powers exploding, they would win. And maybe that's a good thing that you didn't have, good against bad, because a lot of times bad's going to win. The Undertaker saves Liz one, even though for me, I was already an Undertaker fan. I think they needed to do this to kind of go, okay, yeah, he'll be a good guy, because people were cheering for him anyways. So it was important, but it's not really memorable like the handshake. So it's kind of, again, it's one of those ones I could vote either way. I do have on here Undertaker saves Liz, so I'm going to go to the earlier Jonesy's prediction, which is Undertaker versus Liz, and then I'll let you guys battle it out. So Undertaker saves Liz, and that one was like a two-parter too. Like it wasn't just one show; they did it in kind of stages.
Yeah, because they needed that explanation of why he stopped the chair. So they did it on the funeral parlor. The unfortunate part is after the Jake Roberts thing, it was just Undertaker still doing the methodical, slow-paced thing. He had that feud with DiBiase's guys, the melting of the chain, and he wasn't the Undertaker we eventually got to know and love even more after his Shawn Michaels matches. He was still the plodding, methodical, kind of boring. I hate to say it. Guy, the image and the entrance and everything, bone chilling, great, but the in-ring work was meh, because I think they kept on also feeding him big opponents, which he does better when he's going against smaller guys, as we saw later in his career, except for the matches with Kane, which they were pretty even and really good at. Savage, that forming of the Mega Powers led to all that storyline that led up to him getting the title, then the explosion the next year with the jealousy over Hogan and Elizabeth.
Oh, no!
I think the face turn for Savage had a bigger payoff than the face turn for Undertaker.
This doesn't sound good for my Undertaker.
So, Chris Maloney.
It's kind of hard to go against that impression of Paul Bearer, but yeah, I've got to go Mega Powers.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Okay, so that concludes round number 2, and I'm just going to do a couple more things. Well, Chris Maloney, would you like to run down what happened in round number 2?
Yeah, 3. So round 2. Round 2. So we've got only 1 3-0, which was kind of interesting, but CM Punk's pipe bomb moves on 2-1. Austin won't give up, moves on 3-0. Hogan at WrestleMania 18 versus The Rock moves on 2-1 versus Andre slapping Heenan, or Heenan slapping Andre, sorry. And then lastly, Mega Powers form beats out Undertaker saves Liz 2-1. So we got Mega Powers versus Hogan and Austin versus Punk in the next round, which should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm just getting the graphic ready for the next round. So yeah, anything that surprised you guys in that second round?
I'd like to ask a question about the. I'm butting in, so before I forget when I want to ask, the last we seen Paul Bearer in the WWF, was that when he was getting buried in cement, or was there other things after that?
We saw him again multiple times.
All right.
Yeah, after Taker supposedly killed him, they said he lived, and then we saw him a bunch of other times.
All right, then.
Involving Kane and Undertaker.
Oh, I don't care about the backstory now.
So, yeah. And he was even in death part of a storyline.
Sean is like our Wikipedia for wrestling.
All right, so I'm going to put Sean to the test then. What was Paul Bearer's final WWE appearance?
I have no idea what his final appearance was, other than his urn with CM Punk.
So his last appearance on WWE television was during an angle in April 2012 episode of Raw, where he's involved in the ongoing rivalry between Kane and Randy Orton. Orton took Bearer hostage, which led to Kane locking Bearer in a meat locker.
Yeah, I knew he got kidnapped a bunch of times by both Edge and Orton. But that brings us to our semifinals. Round number 3, match number 1 has CM Punk against Stone Cold Steve Austin. In this case, you have a very silent, not silent, but a very calm sort of conversation with the fans and just revealing things versus a guy bleeding in the middle of the ring and refusing to give up, showing that, he had the intestinal fortitude to last as much as he could and would not say, I quit. Everything that produced afterwards with Steve Austin, up until, unfortunately, that ill-fated I want to turn heel at WrestleMania 17 moment, set a huge rocket onto Steve's back. People still, I think, would be more inclined to cheer Austin and the glass breaking than hearing Cult of Personality starting up and having CM Punk walk out. People would love it for the first moment with Punk returning, but we saw it, unfortunately, with Backstage, and yeah, he was part of that on Fox. So it wouldn't be a huge moment or surprise if he were to show up in a WWE ring when Vince McMahon finally is able to get fans, because none of that's happening until at least fans are present to get the good pop. Austin, people tune in for, regardless, his podcasts and all that. So I'm going to go with Austin going to the finals. Chris Maloney.
So Austin is going to the finals. It's the legacy of Austin post that Bret Hart moment. There's nothing that Punk can do to even compete with that. Yeah, it's going to be Austin, because the fact is that moment, that iconic moment, meant more to the career of Stone Cold than the moment meant to CM Punk. The internet didn't blow up when Austin was bleeding to death, but it did cement his legacy as far as being WWE, being a WWE legend goes. So yeah, hands down, Stone Cold for me.
And Jonesy.
Again, it's, to me, it's a harder one, because the pipe bomb is innovative. It's different. The fact that they allowed that, it's like stepping into the next way of wrestling, and it kind of did. So in the Austin one, except for the fact that he didn't tap, that he passed out, that sticks out more than him bleeding. I think the bleeding made it better, but I think, and I gotta go with the bleeding. I gotta go with Austin, because I think about it now, and that bleeding, it's like, the question is, if he didn't bleed, if the blade wasn't done, would that have been as iconic as it was without the blood?
I think they needed the blood, and that's why Bret said, let's do it. And he had Austin do it. Like, Bret did it for Austin because Austin wasn't sure about it. Plus, Bret has been a master of hiding things, even right in front of Vince. They did it right beside him and didn't notice. So Austin's moving on to the finals and taking on the winner of Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 18 versus Randy Savage and the Mega Powers formation. Chris Maloney.
Well, you know, anytime I've ever been on this show, I get a buzzkill any chance I get to basically eliminate Macho Man. So it's, yeah, definitely Hogan Rock. So, Jones, curious to see where you're going to go with this.
I'm on Hogan to vote for him. I'm just thinking a reason not to. Because now, again, I got to see Mega Powers form. Yeah, you know what? I have to go with Hogan on it because I was there. I felt it. Like, even though it's going to be tough for Austin not to win, because I still want to vote for Hogan. I think Hogan. It's Hogan. That again. It's when they say WrestleMania moment. When they say, you know, yeah, be there. That is one of those things where it's you don't have to be there, but it's like if you were the final goal to a gold game, that's that feeling, that once in a holy crap, you know. So Hogan.
Well, I can appreciate you guys voting for Hogan. Any other
God, he's a good winner.
Yeah, any other bracket, I probably would have voted for that because of the fact that I was there as well. Like I said, 18 rows off the floor, looking directly at the hard camera and everything. But I'm a Savage fan, and the fact that that moment was the first time Elizabeth really took anything hitting her, like any physicality there. The moment of building the two joining, the two top guys in WWE at the time, or WWF at the time, and where it led to with the explosion, that's where I'm definitely picking because of the long term of that face turn. But I definitely, as I said, appreciate the Hogan one. The next night in Montreal, longest standing ovation. You can't go wrong either way. So Hogan is going to move on to the finals. We'll just show that graphic right now briefly while I set up what the finals is. Any surprises with this week's tournament, or, you know, if somebody who could have come out of, say, if Hogan wasn't there, who could have come out of there and gone against Austin? Do you see
from the bottom half?
Who have you seen that would have been Savage?
No, to me, there's. I mean, Jericho, I think, would be up there. To me, anyways, personally, I mean, that ranks just because of the fact that it was the everything that Jericho had done with Kevin Owens leading up to what was supposed to be the WrestleMania moment. So the whole backstory behind it. But I mean, probably the weakest to me would have been Luger's slam.
And what about the top half? Anybody other than Austin could have been better to go against Hogan?
Well, yeah, Punk, obviously.
So
and then to me personally, Batista.
Batista could have been your other choice?
Oh yeah, hands down. It's when I think of those moments, if I would have watched them back as a wrestling fan, it's Batista definitely for me. But I'll give you a little bit of history there, Sean. So Hulk Hogan, 2002, fought The Rock at WrestleMania 18 in Toronto. Randy Macho Man Savage in 2002 was fighting Spider-Man. So there's a big kind of between the two of them.
Bonesaw. So Jonesy, your thoughts before you dive into the final match?
I'm just looking through the notes here. You know, I don't think anyone else other than Hogan could go up against Austin. And I only say that because of the feeling that was in the air that night. As cheesy as all that sounds.
I didn't realize that Phil Collins was in the building.
Well, I know, because to me, what this boils down to, picking who is the winner, is the one where it did the most for their career. Because that's the whole reason why you switch a guy, is to make him bigger.
So you get to start. Which one's taking it, in your opinion?
Austin. I mean, personally, I think the pipe bomb was the one that was more important as far as changing how some things were done in wrestling, breaking some barriers, changing how wrestling is looked at. Because again, he was allowed to go out there and open up a different dimension. But as far as for their career itself, he was already dropping pipe bombs before that. So Austin, and I know he's up against Hogan. I'm just blowing out loud, but yeah, Austin. I think it did the most for his career.
Yeah, and as we said, from that he started just before the King of the Ring and dropped the Austin 316. And Chris Maloney mentioned earlier that moment with the sharpshooter and the blood and the passing out and everything that happened in that I Quit match was the official moment when the turn was made solid. So Steve Austin is our winner against Hulk Hogan. Your vote really isn't going to matter, but what would you vote there, Chris Maloney?
So originally I was going to go Hogan Rock, and then Jones put it simply where he said what moment meant more to the career of the individual. So when he said that, I started thinking to myself, and I started thinking, no, it's going to be Austin. So 3-0 Austin.
3-0 Austin. So there we go, guys.
The Hogan thing was great, but it didn't advance his career.
No. So that was this week's Fantasy Warfare tournament. Thank you guys for being a part of it. You can catch this on Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere else you get your podcast from, iHeartRadio, iTunes. We're going to be there. I'm putting up later on tonight. So if you've been with us this evening, thank you for joining us. Before we leave, got anything that you'd like to plug, Chris Maloney?
AEW is coming up next, and with that being said, is their 1-year anniversary show where all 4 titles are on the line. So it'll be interesting to see. No news yet on what we've talked about off air, but no news is sometimes good news, as my wife put it. So we'll leave it at that. Okay,
Jonesy, you got anything?
I got a lot of nacho cheese to eat, and that's about it.
Okay, so
I'd show you how big the cans are, but
yeah, before we get out of here, next week I found this picture on Facebook. It has 16 guys that worked in WWE in the late 80s, early 90s, and none of them held the world title, especially because Hogan was around. So we're going to break down the 16 guys and see who could have been the best champion that never was. So until next week, thank you guys for being with us. Enjoy AEW, and see you tomorrow night for Scumbag.
Fan energy.